guys, welcome to another round of texture Kombi van live texture reviews. Thank you for joining. Hope everyone had a wonderful Christmas break, great Boxing Day, and if you're still on holidays, hopefully still have a really relaxing time. I know I have. I went on holiday, so that's why there's been a little bit of a break, but definitely going to be making up for it over the next few days. Hoping to get through a couple more reviews over the next couple days, so please stay tuned. Cool. So I've got a couple awesome Kombi vans to share with you guys today. These guys reached out to me and asked for a review, and so here we are. So the first one I'm going to be reviewing today is, which one is it? The old hippie van. So one second. All right. So this one was really fun. All right, I'm just going to zoom in. So this is where we're at now with this one. Really colorful, really bright, really stood out to me. So in terms of feedback, oh, there is my cat. All right, so I really love the colors and the overall composition of this piece. I think the blues and the greens worked really well together. As well as, you know, we have the little white part that breaks it up at the top. Oh, gosh. All right. Sorry, guys. So, in terms of the background, I really liked it. I thought it was a really interesting background, different from everyone else's as well, so it definitely stood out for me. So here we go. So this is where we're up to now. A piece of advice for me for next time would be, because I can see that this is still a work in progress, right? I would suggest not adding any compositing effects until after you've finalized your Kombi van. It's pretty heavily vignetted. It's heavily contrasted as well. So unfortunately, it's a little bit difficult for me to really judge some of the colors and to make sure some of the colors are technically accurate and technically correct. If I scroll down just a little bit to a previous iteration, I can see, to me, this looks like a straight render, and it's a little bit easier for me to be able to review something like this. So for the most part, I will be referring to the uncomposited piece. I'm very aware that you have added some more details since then, but I will be referring to this one just because I can see the materials a little bit easier. All right, so in terms of the secondary layers, I thought they were really well done. It's quite often that when we add secondary layers, they can appear quite unnatural. So I think the dirt and the rust and some of these layers have actually been executed quite well. The dirt really does feel like a real heavy dirt coming from the back of the tires, and I can see that they've taken into account where it would accumulate naturally as you're driving. So I can see that it's sort of flicking backwards behind the tire, flicking sort of upwards around here. I like the distribution on the tire. I think that was really well distributed, and yeah, a few other areas as well. Yeah. I think something that stood out for me for this Kombi van was just, in my opinion, it's a little bit too busy. So my eye doesn't really have a resting point as I look over the Kombi van. You have some beautiful, you know, colorful effects around here. And I do really like how you've kept the top half white. So I think if you'd covered the whole Kombi van in that pattern, it would have been way over the top. But I do think that's a lovely contrast. I think it's the secondary layers that are standing out a little bit too much for me, as well as perhaps some of these extra decals on top. I would give it a go. I would give a go just toning some of them back, maybe removing a couple of those extra decals and just stripping it back to be a little bit cleaner. If I go back now to some of your reference images, so I'm just going to scroll down. So even this one here, to me, looks a little bit cleaner, and it's a little bit more peaceful. My eyes feel a little bit more relaxed looking at some of these pieces. I think some of the color balances are quite nice here. Perhaps we've just got a little bit over the top with the previous iteration. So if I scroll down to your reference images, I just want to take a look at some of the various levels of dirt and dust that we are seeing on cars. So this was excellent. I can see this has been incorporated into your Kombi van very well. But if I scroll through some of these images, each Kombi van reference that you've provided me, they're all quite dirty, but they're all very different in terms of the types of secondary layers that we see. On this one, we have quite a bit of wear and tear from the paint. You can see that this purple is coming up underneath it. And we also have some leaking rust textures. But there's also quite a lot of areas that are still quite clean and quite not too busy to look at. So whilst, you know, this gets really heavy, for example, down the bottom, there's some large scale details around here, and on the roof that don't have that heavy level of detail. If I keep scrolling through some other examples, that's yours. Let's look at this one, for example. This one has those same large rush trunks that we see in your Kombi van. But again, this Kombi van only has the rush trunks and doesn't have too much else going on. So it's got a few rush trunks at the bottom around here. The roof's still quite clean. And I think there was one more here. Again, this one was another really dirty Kombi van, but a different level of secondary layer again. So more of a rough, almost like a concrete-like pattern on the paint wear and tear, but it lacks those huge sort of chunks that we see. So what I'm getting at here is that I would choose one of these references rather than trying to combine details from every single reference that you see. I would pick one and stick to those secondary layers. And I think that would make it a little bit less busy than what it is now. So perhaps if we go up to the top, perhaps we could reduce the level of some of these rush chips and maybe reduce some of this dirt and lean towards maybe one or the other. I wouldn't be trying to add every single secondary layer that you could think of for this Kombi van. So just knock that back a little bit. Give the audience's eyes somewhere to rest, somewhere that has something quite clean for us to rest our eyes on. What else have I got written down? So in terms of the dirt color, let's have a look at that. So the dirt, like I said, the dirt down the bottom here was actually very well done. I really enjoyed the placement of it. It's quite natural. The only thing that stands out to me, now this could be part of the compositing that we've done as well. So again, it's always good to have a straight render as well for us to review. If you take a look at the color of the dust on the floor, and now take a look at the mud and the dirt on the Kombi van, and you can see it doesn't quite line up. Something really important as a texture artist is to not only make our asset look good, we have to make it tie into our environment as well. It really has to tell a story. So our Kombi van is in what seems to be a desert-like environment. So the floor would be quite dusty, it's quite red in terms of the level of dirt. So if this Kombi van was driving through this environment, I would say the dirt around the tires would be more of a reddy tinge, less brown. And some of this dirt kicking up along the back of the Kombi van in this image looks like a really thick, wet mud, or even a dry mud, but quite dark. I would expect it to be more dustier in tone and a lot lighter. So something more along these colors. So me and my husband went driving. We took an Audi down a four-wheel drive track. That was really fun. My husband hated it. And I took some pictures of his car after we'd driven through the dust and the dirt. So I'm gonna upload them and show you guys next time. But I wanted to show you guys what a car looks like after it's really been through the dust and the dirt. And I was actually quite surprised by how it looked. It still had, you know, these little flecks of dirt, but because it was quite a dusty environment, the dust sort of settled quite high and just had a slightly different appearance to what you would get as if it was like a really thick caked on mud. So if you would like, if you're not looking to change the type of dirt on this Kombi van, the other option is to maybe find a slightly different environment that reflects that dark dirt. So something more like I don't know, something with a darker dirt down the bottom, maybe something a bit wet along those lines. So I encourage you to really just have a think about that. All right. I reckon that's enough for feedback for this one. So one last thing, I would consider, I've already sort of mentioned these sort of extra patterns. Play around with some of these extra decals on top. I do like the blue on the front. I think that's quite a nice touch. But yeah, I think maybe removing some of these decals, or if you want to keep them, reducing the busyness of the pattern behind it, that would be another suggestion as well. But again, these are just suggestions. You're welcome to do whatever you see fit. And I'm really excited. I think you said that you're about to release a new update, so I can't wait to see the next update. Cool, thank you. I will move to the next one. So this guy here, it was cool. Shagadelic Daydream. All right, so this one, the artist of this particular Kombi van again reached out to me and asked for a review. So really happy to offer this one some advice. I loved the color choices. So let's go down. Well, let's start off with some of the references. So the artist said that they really wanted to channel a bit of a different color vibe to the Kombi van. So more oranges and yellows and, you know, that sort of color palette, some of the stripes as well. And I loved this mood board. I thought it was really cool. It was really fun. You know, you can see where inspiration has been drawn from, like this top left up here, the browns, the oranges and the reds. It's a beautiful color scheme. Yeah. So as we sort of progress through the story of how they created this Kombi van, we started off with base materials, which again is brilliant. I always suggest working up those base materials before you add any dirt or anything like that. And as we progress through, we can see that slowly the secondary layers are being built up. Something I did really like, and I read through the paragraphs as well as to what you write. I love when artists add a little description as well. I find that it really allows me to understand their thought processes behind everything. So yeah, if you can do a little paragraph with every submission, it's very beneficial. I liked how I can tell that this artist has actually watched my previous review sessions in terms of understanding the color of metals and the color of how dark materials should be and what sort of values they need to be at. It was mentioned that, yeah, like they needed to lift up the metal colors and lift up some black colors. So I can tell that they took on some advice, which I thought was great, that they were able to interpret advice from another review session onto their own Kombi van. I loved some of these really subtle details. So the intention of this Kombi van is to be not overly dirty, but worn and well loved, right? So some of these subtle details on the roof and on the side here, really well done. They are spot on. Now, if I go up a little bit higher, let's now look at the final piece. So this is where we're at now. So in this piece, we can see that some decals have been added and all of the materials have been filled in. So again, I love the color choices. I think the browns and those retro colors work really well together. And I love the warm retro decal along the side. So a couple things in terms of presentations where I'll start off with. First of all, just increase the quality of your renders. There's quite a bit of noise coming through on the front here and on the side. It makes it a little bit hard to read some of the details. So definitely for your final render, increase some of those samples, increase the maximum sample count and the amount of time that you allow the Kombi van to render. it would really just increase the quality of your work, so that we can see all those beautiful details that you spent time on. HDRI. Now, I'm going to be honest, the HDRI unfortunately is quite distracting to your piece. It's quite green, and unfortunately the green is clashing with the beautiful warm orange tones that you've added into your Kombi van. It's sort of been tainted by that contrast in color. So your browns are appearing more like a dark green than a warm brown as what you intended that color to be. I would, if it was me recreating this look, I would try and find something that complements your color scheme a little bit more. So I would go something a little bit more neutral, if anything, with your HDRI, something which isn't casting too much colored light onto the Kombi van. Let this brown color and the warm colors really shine, and I think that would be really helpful to tie in this whole piece together and to really just make it look great. So yeah, that's one piece of advice. Yeah, so that's in terms of presentation. Now, I said I absolutely loved the subtle secondary details on the Kombi van. So some of these little details around the corners, they were really quite nicely done. I do believe it's a little bit heavy on the metal, so I would tone that back by like 50%, in all honesty. Really reduce the bump on that metal and smooth it out a bit, and get that looking a little bit cleaner. Assuming that the rest of the Kombi van, that's the look that you're going for. You could probably as well drop the roughness on some of the paint. So some of these highlights on the Kombi van, they're not matte, but they're not shiny like you would expect a painted car to be. So they're kind of that in-between value. And when you have that in-between roughness value, I'm going to assume it's about 0.2, 0.3-ish. It can make big objects like cars appear more like toys. So what I would suggest you do is drop the roughness of that paint quite a bit, maybe about 0.1 or even lower, just so you can bring back some of these reflections in the side of the car, because right now they're quite diffused out and quite soft. If you are going for a real matte paint, maybe you can broaden them a bit more, but having this sort of in-between value is just not doing the car paint any justice. As well as that, the metals on the side. So if you have a look at the metals here, this isn't too bad, but on the hubcaps, really drop that roughness as well. I would love to see some of the shiny reflections from your HDRI in these metals. So all along here. Let's just have a look at some of your reference images. Yeah, see, they're not, I can't really see up close, but if you take a look at some of these hubcaps up close in some of these vehicles, you'll notice that you'll see the road and you'll see the environment quite clearly through that metal. Same with, if you look up here in the wipers and things like that. So the roughness is quite low, honestly below 0.1, almost quite like very, very sharp. So drop the roughnesses of those ones if you could. You could keep the roughness of the scratches and the wear and tear layers on top, but you do want to have that contrast so that you do have that interesting background reflecting through these metals. Yeah, two more things I'm just going to mention. Add some more patterns to your curtains, perhaps something, just something like of that retro sort of vibe. I think would really add a little bit more character to your Kombi van. And lastly, I just want to talk about this sticker. So I had to pull in some help to help me understand how these stickers apply to cars. So Josh, my partner, he showed me basically how these cars are painted or stickers are applied to them. So there's obviously two different options you can go with. You can paint the car, right? So in which case it would have brush strokes, or it would be like a spray paint. And The other option you can go with is like a sticker, apparently. So a, what do they call it? Oh, I can't remember, but it's like a contact, right? Which goes over the top of the car. So there's two different types of ways these decals can be applied. And depending on the way that these decals are applied, it's going to change the way that they receive wear and tear. Something like a sticker is, it would peel in a very different way. So you would start to get little, lifting, lost my reference, but you'd start to get little peels and little bubbles sort of form underneath stickers. And then if you had a big chunk like this, it would sort of peel off from one side, and it would peel off right till it gets to the edge, right? And there would also be very sharp peels. So if, let's for 1 second assume that this is a sticker that is applied, this sort of level of wear and tear where it's really soft wouldn't occur on something like a sticker. This is getting closer down the bottom right. Some of these real sharp wear and tears of the stickers being pulled off. But this soft sort of gradient at the front, to me, doesn't make sense. So having the combination of the soft gradient wear and tear as well as the sharp the sharp chips is just clashing in terms of what would happen in the real world. Now, assuming this could be spray painted, that could be another option. Again, I believe that a spray paint probably wouldn't wear and tear in the same way as what we have here. So I encourage you to have a think about how these decals are applied, and then research some old versions of that and how they're peeling, what sort of details are you seeing, and make sure you're copying a reference image. Never copy out of your mind or what you, just what looks good. It's very easy to do, but it's also really important that all of this secondary layers and wear and tear makes sense in the real world as well. So I really encourage you to have a look at some references, and that will really assist in the realism of your piece. And that's it. So I think that's quite a bit of feedback for you to keep working on. Can't wait to see the next update. Again, really great job. And any feedback I've mentioned today is just to push it to the next level, right? You've done a great job, especially I think you mentioned that you're quite new to Substance Painter. So to be able to texture such a big object like this is really quite fantastic. So really well done. Lastly, now I've just picked this one at random. It stood out to me as something really quite clever. So I decided to show you guys this one. So this one is called Peace and Love. Now, something I adored about this one is the amount of materials that were actually created in Substance Designer. So let's just scroll down for a minute. So a lot of this was actually done in Designer. Now, my understanding from what I've read is that the main pattern was completed in Substance Painter. So let's have a look. Some of the main colors and shapes are all done in Painter and then imported into Substance Designer to get some more love and some more treatment on top of that. So what we have here is the artist has added some peeling paint, some bubbles, wear and tear on top of the color in Substance Designer to produce a really cool effect, and something that you honestly wouldn't be able to get in Substance Painter without a million layers. So have a look at this, guys. Just some of these bubbling paint. It's, yeah, really, really, really cool. I really loved it. So again, all over. The artist said that they wanted it to be produced by an amateur artist. So the way that they applied the paint peeling and the brush strokes was meant to look somewhat, a little bit messy and not entirely perfect, which I thought was really, really cool. Yeah, so this is our final product. So again, beautiful color scheme, and quite a few components of this are really approaching photorealism, I must say. The windows are actually my favorite part. This here is beautiful, and these were done in Substance Designer apparently. This beautiful crack in the window and these windscreen wiper marks, they add so much character to the material. and it really tells that story. It's, you know, it perfectly lines up with the windscreen wiper marks. Yeah, absolutely phenomenal. Well done. Some of this paint as well, it's you know, approaching that level of realism. The metal as well. So yeah, well done. In terms of feedback, I'm just going to go through a few different areas where I feel that we can improve it and push it a little bit further. So first of all, your HDRI. Again, I'm quite amazed that you've managed to get this looking so cool in such a flat environment. There's not really any reflections happening in your metals or anything like that. So if you were to put this into whatever environment, maybe like a city environment or an outdoor environment, and add some of those interesting details into the reflections, that will just instantly take that to the next level straight away. So if you pop that into a HDRI, make sure make sure it's sitting on the ground plane and the lighting is appropriate for your Kombi van. That will instantly give it a level of photorealism beyond what you have now. I will just mention these headlights are probably the best headlights I've seen so far. Great work. You've textured them how I intended them to be textured. I can see that you have emission on the light globes underneath. You have a chrome layer around. So you've obviously done a bit of research as to how light bulbs are created. In terms of, you have your light, you have your metal chrome around it, which bounces all the light around, and you have the glass layer on top. You also have added a pattern to the outer plastic cover, and yeah, absolutely spot on. And anyone having a bit of trouble with lights, you have a look at this one for reference. Very well done. So let's talk about the metal. So the metal to me is appearing a little bit cloudy. Unfortunately, I'll have a chat about this. I might actually go into depth about this another time. But unfortunately, with the metallic roughness workflow, so essentially it's a type of workflow in which we drive metalness using a metallic value of 0 to 1. When we use that workflow, it can unfortunately cause artifacts. Now, if we check out the front of this bumper, you can see straight away what I'm talking about. Whenever you combine a really shiny metal with a really rough dirt, soft dirt layer on top, you do seem to get this artifact around the edges. So you can see that where the dirty dust is, around the edge of every single part of this, there is sort of a soft, cloudy, in-between state. Now, this is just something we have to work around, unfortunately. The way I usually work around it is to try and soften some of the transitions between the dirt and the metals. So perhaps the dirt layer, I might knock back the opacity of some of the roughness and some of the metallicness, and sort of try and get them a little bit closer in line. And I usually find that that helps quite a bit. Otherwise, the only other way we can sort of tackle this is through shader, through, you know, applying different shading models on top of each other, which was not relevant for this Kombi van because, of course, it was produced in iRay as a render. But to be able to get something nice in Substance Painter with iRay, yeah, just definitely try and you might be able to sharpen up some of the transitions a bit. So by sharpen, I mean make the values either closer to 1 or 0. So get the boundary of the dirt a bit sharper and not so soft. And yeah, just drop the opacity of the metalness and the roughness layers, and that will softly blend it a little bit nicer into the metal. You could probably add a few more like scratches and dents, I reckon, on the front bumper. So I love the shininess that you have. Keep the shininess. I always love having that contrast of the matte paint and the shiny metal, but just a few little nicks and dents here and there to add some more character, just a few little spots. But nothing too strong. And yeah, knock back where you can a lot of this cloudy texture, because right now it's not looking like dirt. It's looking a bit more like that artifact that we talked about before. So have a look at that. Next, I would like to talk about some of this on the front. So something that stands out a bit to me is, let's see if I can find it. this sort of shiny, spotty secondary layer on the front of the Kombi and along the sides as well. When the light is shining over it, it's appearing quite metallic and quite shiny. I'm going to assume that it's got metallic components to it. I think I found a picture before. Sorry, guys. Yeah, so if we look at, what was that? That's right. So down here, the spottiness sort of, yeah, here. So around here, that spotty texture kind of just looks non-metallic. It just sort of, it kind of goes a bit grey. But here, it looks like it's got a very, either a bright, white, shiny, spotty layer on top or a metal layer. I'm not sure, but something on that, about that, just needs to be knocked back a bit because I'm not quite sure what it's intended to be. Is like this Kombi van intended to be an aluminium which is being painted, and then that paint is, you know, stripping back and revealing the metal underneath? Or is it a metallic paint that's been, you know, splattered on top? I encourage you to think about what that is you're trying to achieve. Find some reference for it and try to copy it a little bit closer to reference. I think that would really assist in just softening that. Tires are pretty good, to be honest. Yeah, so lastly, I just want to talk about the paint itself. Let's have a look at a close-up. So the sunflowers on top. Now, it's absolutely beautiful to look at, I'll be honest. So I love these little bubble details, and I think it's really cool. Now, I think, unfortunately, the bubbles are sort of clashing with the story that you are trying to portray. So if we had an old painted car, I would expect the paint to be, I would expect if it was that thickly applied, you would have a few more brush strokes. So if we have a look at some different types of car paint, we can see that the thick sort of brushing nature, because obviously it was hand painted, as it was mentioned, you would definitely have a few more brush strokes around it, around sort of maybe around the sunflower as it's being painted in and out. And then in terms of the bubbling and the cracking, you would definitely have some level of peeling for sure. So I would assume the bubbles would start appearing if it was poorly painted. But I would say perhaps a few less bubbles, maybe more concentrate, rather than uniformly applied over the entire sunflower. I would sort of knock them back so they're more regionalized, maybe more regionalized around the edges or around areas where water would get to it. And then I would say that where some of these bubbles are getting stronger, you could almost have a cracking effect. So where the bubble sort of lifts up and then chips away at the top. So you reveal some of the underlying, maybe you reveal some of the underlying blue paint underneath, or perhaps like a rusty layer underneath that. So I love doing that combination of height and then like a dip in like underneath the bubble. So that's something I would look at, and maybe some cracks as well. So something, again, this heavily painted and this old would start to have some peeling paint and some cracks. If we go back to this old, the old hippie van we have here, some of these little cracks on the front may look nice on some of the areas, and see how like the paint's chipped back and revealed some rusty areas underneath. Just a few little nuances like that around those really heavily painted areas, I think would look really nice. But again, that's being really quite picky. So from a distance, it's yeah, it's still holding out really quite well. So just in summary, reduce some of the dirt on the metal, reduce some of this spotty sort of layer going around, either reduce it or reduce some of the metallicness that's, you know, kicking back up off of it. And yeah, just like have a closer look at some of the paint and the types of secondary layers of those paints as well. But other than that, great work. I can't wait to see it in a background environment. I think it's going to look great. So yeah, I reckon that's it for now, guys. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to jump back on tomorrow at some point and review another 3. So please get in contact with me if you would like a review. Otherwise, I will, again, just pick at random. If you have any questions, hop onto our Discord channel. We have a lovely little community on there. We've had plenty of questions and plenty of like chit chatter backwards and forth, and I'm always checking it. So if you have any questions, happy to help whenever. So I'll leave it there, guys. Thanks for watching. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of your holiday.